The aliens thought humanity was just another primitive species, soft-skinned, war-weary, and easily broken. So when the Galactic Empire demanded 1,000,000 human lives as tribute, they expected bows and obedience. But instead they got Elias Cross, a man in a gray suit, who smiled, pressed a button, and replied, "You're not getting our people. You're getting a war." They brought him in through a hall carved from black stone, polished by the weight of subjugated civilizations. Each step of Elias Cross echoed beneath the vaulted ceilings of Cortex Prime, as if even the air held its breath. A lone human surrounded by towering insected guards, scaled dignitaries, and floating beings whose forms rippled with psionic disdain. He didn't flinch. He didn't bow. He walked straight. The grand chamber was suffocating in spectacle. Beams of starlight filtered through crystalline panels, falling across obsidian floors and thrones plated in gold mined from conquered worlds. At the far end sat Executive Ratkarn, a creature more carapace than flesh, his compound eyes watching with the arrogance of one who has crushed species for sport. "Ambassador Cross," the executor's voice rasped like rusted blades. "You arrive, modestly." Elias didn't smile. "I brought only what I need." Laughter buzzed across the chamber. The delegates of the Galactic Empire shifted, some amused, others indifferent. Humans were the latest addition to the galactic roster, recent, naive, ambitious. They'd achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago. Most thought they'd be pliable. Useful. "Your system has been categorized as Tier 8. Low resistance, moderate output. Your tribute is proportionate," Ratkarn declared, gesturing lazily. 1,000,000 biologicals per cycle. 80% extractive share. You will submit schematics of all military hardware. Resistance will result in planetary correction. Correction. The word meant orbital bombardment, enforced sterilization, and the quiet deletion of history. Elias didn't move. He stared at the executor, his hands clasped behind his back, his suit plain, his posture calm. "I acknowledge your terms," he said. "Do you?" The executor leaned forward. "Then kneel, and let us begin the rite." A beat passed. "No." The word struck like a detonator. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was disbelief. No species had ever said it so plainly. No riddles. No stalling. Just a flat, absolute rejection. The executor hissed. "You misunderstand. This is not negotiation." "I understand perfectly," Elias replied. "You think we're here to bend. We're not. You think you're offering a choice. You're not. You're issuing a threat wrapped in ritual. And now you're going to hear a response." The chamber stirred, tension crackling like static between beings that hadn't fought a real war in generations. "This is not wise," one delegate muttered. "Earth is unequipped." Elias reached down and opened the small case he'd brought. Inside sat a single, matte black device with no markings. "You see a diplomat," he said. "But you're wrong. I'm the last step before violence." The executor stood. "What is that?" Elias placed a finger on the device. This is our answer. You wanted submission. You'll get silence. You wanted tribute. You'll get war." Without pause, he pressed the button. In orbit above Cortex Prime, 20 cloaked human vessels, previously posing as diplomatic satellites, came online. Across the galaxy, dormant code embedded in human-built infrastructure activated. On 50 Imperial worlds, encryption cracked open like a virus, flooding networks with loops of the same message. "We are not your subjects. We are your reckoning." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates rose, screamed, flailed. Ratkarn bellowed a psychic blast that cracked the marble floor beneath him. "You planned this. You deceived the Empire." "We warned the Empire," Elias said evenly. "You just weren't listening. What have you unleashed?" Elias looked up at the vaulted ceiling as if he could see the dreadnoughts descending. "We call it Legion Protocol. And you're going to learn something very human today," Ratkarn snarled. "You will be exterminated. Elias's tone didn't change. We've heard that before. You think we're afraid because you've burned 1,000 worlds. But we come from a world that tried to burn us first. We clawed our way out of extinction more times than we can count. You see peace as weakness. We see peace as the pause before the shot. The executor's guards moved. Elias didn't react. He wasn't afraid because he knew they wouldn't reach him. Not before the shift happened. Behind the chamber walls, the security systems flickered. Static screamed. Lights snapped off for a moment, then returned, now pulsing red. We control your systems now, Elias said. Your network security was impressive. But you built it with trust. We don't do that. Vrakarn trembled, mandibles twitching in barely contained rage. What do you want? Freedom, Elias answered. But it's not something we ask for. It's something we carve out of monsters. You are nothing. You think because you've disrupted a few signals. Your 9th fleet is gone, Elias interrupted. We lured them to a place we call Saturn's graveyard. We mined it. Laced it with quantum reflectors. They're not coming home. Vrakarn reeled. A psychic shriek erupted from his mind. Delegates clutched their heads, blood pouring from their ears. Elias stepped forward. You thought you were managing another vassal species. You didn't realize you were lighting a match over a powder keg. Around the room, holograms flared to life, footage of human fleets appearing over rebel systems, helping suppressed species rise, strike back, seize control. Vrakarn stumbled. This is madness. This is justice, Elias said. Delayed, calculated, and precise. You'll drown in blood. Maybe. But it'll be our blood. Not yours. Not anymore. The executor collapsed back into his throne, breath ragged. Elias turned to leave. You demanded tribute. Instead, you got humanity's answer. Guards didn't move. No one spoke. The walls watched him as he walked. The human didn't raise his voice. Didn't draw a weapon. But in 10 minutes, he had killed an empire louder than any army ever could. The moment Elias Cross pressed the device, the galaxy flinched. No alarms sounded in the chamber. No countdowns. No cinematic explosions. Just a flicker in the air, so subtle the delegates barely noticed. Yet, in that instant, the fate of empires shifted. Above Cortax Prime, dark forms uncloaked. 20 vessels, lean and cruel in silhouette, designed not for diplomacy but for vengeance. They did not broadcast identity or intent. They simply appeared, silent and watching, like predators deciding when to strike. Across the stars, systems lit up in crimson. Legion protocol, seeded decades ago into every beacon, relay, and embassy outpost, activated in perfect sync. Encrypted routines overwritten Imperial architecture, seizing control of sensors, silencing communication, shutting gates. What the Empire had seen as crude human tech had been camouflage. Trojan horses in plain sight. In the Empire's command core, Admiral Vexel screamed into dead channels. Frantic attempts to reroute comms met looping human code. You were warned. You ignored us. Within the diplomatic hall, the delegates descended into disarray. Some demanded explanations. Others bolted for exit points now sealed shut. Vrakarn stood rigid, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. What is this madness? He bellowed. Elias remained still. This is balance. You dare attack us on our own ground? I didn't attack, Elias said calmly. I corrected. You declared yourselves gods. We're just proving you're not. A security drone entered the chamber, lights flickering red. Its voice glitched between protocols. Priority override. Human signal verified. Awaiting instructions. The Empire's systems had turned on themselves. Elias had flipped their control from inside their own walls. You have violated every law of interstellar diplomacy, hissed the delegate from the Glaverii Enclave. Diplomacy died the moment you demanded 1,000,000 human lives, Elias replied. This is a response. Not a rebellion. Not terrorism. A recalibration. The chamber shook, subtly at first. Then again, harder. Distant booms echoed from above. The orbital station was under siege, not from the outside, but from within. Human engineers placed decades ago under the guise of technical observers had activated their final contingency. The Empire had called them parasites. They'd been seeds. Vrakkarn moved forward unsteady. This will not stand. The Imperial Armada will retaliate. Earth will be glass within hours. They're already gone, Elias said. What? Your Ninth Fleet. Every dreadnought. Every war carrier. We fed them false coordinates. Lured them to an empty sector seeded with self-replicating mines and reflective jammers. You'll never find pieces large enough to bury. You're bluffing. Elias didn't respond. He didn't need to. The confirmation was already spiraling across the Empire's own internal networks. A full fleet annihilated without firing a shot. No survivors. No explanation. Vrakkarn staggered, breath rasping. You can't win this, he muttered. You're just one world. One species. We're not here to win, Elias said. We're here to end the game. A projection flared midair. Dozens of Imperial planets now blinked red. Rebellions erupted in perfect synchrony. Enslaved populations who had lived in silence for generations now rose, emboldened by the knowledge that the Empire bled. Human operatives had armed them, trained them, and whispered one shared message: stand now. Or kneel forever. You taught us fear, Elias continued. You crushed weak worlds to keep the rest obedient. We studied that. We learned something you never expected: how to speak in your language, power. But louder. Vrakkarn reached for his throne's console, claw trembling. Elias raised a hand. You should sit. This part gets harder. A final pulse rippled through the Empire's latticework. Central navigation went dark. Artificial wormholes collapsed. Strategic planets, now isolated, could not reinforce each other. The Empire's military might wasn't just weakened, it had been fragmented. What are you? Vrakkarn whispered. Human, Elias answered. No human could plan this. No Empire should have made it necessary. You've doomed trillions. I've freed them. Vrakkarn slumped back. Around him, delegates stared at Elias not as an ambassador, but as something else. A reminder. A warning. A myth reborn in real time. Your kind was supposed to be manageable. Someone muttered. That was your mistake, Elias replied. You confused silence for obedience. Tolerance for weakness. You saw restraint and thought we had no teeth. Elias walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, each step measured. I came here to offer you one final truth, he said. The galaxy isn't big enough anymore for your kind of rule. And we're not small enough to ignore it. You'll bring chaos, another delegate growled. No. We're bringing balance. The chaos was already here. You just got good at hiding it. He reached the center and looked up. You see yourselves as civilization. But you've only ever been the pause between wars. We're just ending the pause. Outside, human dreadnoughts shifted formation, not attacking, but looming. They didn't open fire. They didn't need to. The message had landed, sharper than any missile. Elias spoke one last time. Earth will not be your colony. Humanity will not be your resource. If you come again, come in peace. Or don't come at all. Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind a room of rulers who had never been told no, and now had no one left to say yes. And across the stars, a signal echoed once more. Tribute denied. War authorized. Humanity has entered the conversation. The fleet never made it to Earth. At 0300 hours Galactic Standard, the Empire's Ninth Armada passed the event horizon of Sector 19 Beta, an unremarkable slice of space catalogued as uninhabited. What they didn't know was that humanity had altered those records decades ago. Every NAV beacon, every probe log, every map trajectory, all falsified with meticulous precision. What they thought was a shortcut to Sol was in fact Saturn's graveyard. First came the interference. Long-range comms dissolved into static. Then the reflections began. Hundreds of identical ship signatures pinged across every scanner, all mimicking the configuration of the human dreadnought class. Admiral Trolvex, a veteran of 14 suppressions, called for tactical recalibration. By the time he realized they weren't actual ships but signal bouncers, adaptive mirrors designed to fracture tracking systems, it was already too late. Mine clusters embedded in asteroid fields bloomed in synchronized bursts. The Armada's forward units vanished in arcs of silent flame. Defensive flares launched, but instead of countering the mines, they triggered more. Human-built resonance jammers reprogrammed targeting arrays mid-battle. The fleet began firing on itself. Command ships lost visual. Navigation blinked out. All attempts at retreat redirected them in circles. They had walked into a killing field, blind and proud. The last transmission from the 9th Armada lasted 12 seconds. It wasn't a cry for help. It was Admiral Trolvex shouting, "It's a damn trick! We were never," before the signal cut into static and didn't return. On Cortex Prime, the news hit like a meteor. The Empire's command networks, still partially jammed, received only fragments. Rumors spread faster than confirmation. Some claimed humanity had used black hole weaponry. Others insisted they had allied with the remnants of the extinct Dravaxi. Elias Cross didn't bother correcting them. He stood in front of the Imperial Tribunal's remaining members, holding nothing but a small projection device. Without ceremony, he activated it. A projection of Trolvex appeared, screaming inside the chaos, flickering frames showing the last moments of the proudest armada in the Empire. Hulls tearing open. Ships turning on each other. No enemy in sight, just shadows and explosions. The room went still. Not even the psionic delegates dared to speak. "That's what fear looks like when you mistake it for superiority," Elias said quietly. "You didn't fight them honorably," spat one of the reptilian warlords. "No. We didn't." He turned his eyes to the delegate. "You think war has rules? We don't. We don't dance to old rhythms. We write our own tempo." Vrakarn leaned forward, voice low, strained. "This isn't war. This is deception. This is survival. You thought we'd come begging. You thought humans wouldn't dare strike first. But we didn't strike first, you did. With your tribute demand. With your assumptions. You could have negotiated." Another delegate insisted, voice shaky. Elias turned, no amusement in his tone. "You can't negotiate with a loaded gun pointed at your home." At that, he activated the second file. A document stream, intercepted Empire records, classified and encrypted, now laid bare. The chamber filled with the sound of data scrolling, alien languages overlaid with human translations. Project Tether. Initiative 9V. Genetic mapping of human populations, filed under high threat potential. The notes were clinical, cold. Progenitor markers detected. Containment advised. Control through tribute mandatory. A silence descended, not from shock but from realization. The tribute wasn't random. It wasn't greed. It was containment. Vrakarn whispered, more to himself than anyone. "It's true, then. You are the reemergence." "We don't know who the progenitors were," Elias admitted. "But you clearly do. You saw something in us that terrified you. You carry their spark," Vrakarn said. "The last species that shattered our fleets, that refused submission even at extinction. They disappeared. We thought them gone forever. Maybe we're what they became," Elias said. "Or maybe we're just the next warning." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Delegates argued, denied, panicked. The political structure of the Empire had always relied on keeping every species just scared enough to stay in line, but never so scared they'd revolt. That balance had shattered. The illusion of control died the moment the Empire's fleet did. "I didn't come here for revenge," Elias continued. "I came to deliver a message. And this is it: if you ever point your demands at Earth again, we won't reply. We'll erase the question. The Glaverii delegate hissed. You've opened a war you can't control. It's not a war anymore. It's a correction. You will tear civilization apart. Elias stepped forward. No. We're giving it a second chance. Behind him, the projection shifted again. Footage from dozens of rebel worlds, species long silenced by the Empire now rising. Human military advisors fighting alongside amphibians, mantids, stone-skinned giants. Not as rulers. As allies. Empire outposts overrun. Flags pulled down. Not replaced, just discarded. We didn't come to conquer, Elias said. We came to ensure you never conquer again. Rakkarn's voice trembled with a mix of rage and awe. You were meant to be contained. And you were meant to be forgotten, Elias replied. But here we are. The tribunal crumbled. Orders from Central Command fractured under their own weight. Some species fled. Others pledged neutrality. A few aligned with Earth outright. The unity that had sustained the Empire for thousands of years collapsed in a single, orchestrated act of precision and rebellion. Elias didn't smile as he shut off the projection. There was nothing to celebrate. Not yet. This wasn't humanity's first war, he said. But it will be your last empire. And with that, he walked out of the hall as silently as he'd entered, leaving behind not rubble, but something far more dangerous. A new story. One not written by fear, but by defiance. The capital of the Galactic Empire didn't fall in flames. It fell in whispers. One by one, its planets stopped responding. One by one, sectors that once bowed without question began to question everything. And it was all happening without a single official declaration of war. That was the brilliance. That was the horror. Elias Cross stood in a war room that didn't look like one. No screaming officers, no chaos, just quiet coordination. Every operation was already in motion before the Empire even knew the game had started. There was no single front. Every world was a battlefield, every rebel a spark, every broadcast a weapon. It wasn't conquest. It was unraveling. 16 Imperial nodes offline in the last 2 hours, Commander Rios said from behind him. 5 more haven't checked in. They won't, Elias replied. They were built on fear. We just showed the galaxy what the Empire looks like without it. A technician turned from his station. Sir, transmission from Thalkari High Command. Unencrypted. It's strange. Play it. The projection flickered to life. A warlord, cloaked in the traditional Imperial crimson, sat alone in a dim chamber, eyes sunken. His voice lacked venom, replaced with exhaustion. You've destabilized centuries of order, he said. We're not defending the Empire anymore. We're defending fragments of panic. Elias tilted his head. Then you know what comes next. The warlord nodded. Collapse. No, Elias said. Choice. He cut the feed. There was no point in speeches. They didn't need surrender. They needed awakening. By now, every Imperial citizen had seen the footage. Not of war, but of revelation. The tribute demand. The intercepted documents. The truth the Empire had hidden, that humanity wasn't an anomaly, but a remnant of something ancient, something terrifying, something the Empire once feared so deeply it erased every trace of its existence. Now it lived again. In flesh. In thought. In retaliation. And it wasn't looking to rule. Elias stepped onto the platform for his own message, one he had delayed until the last possible moment. Not because he feared speaking. Because he knew once it aired, the galaxy would never be the same again. He began calmly, no podium, no flags, just his voice. You've seen what we've done. You've watched fleets vanish, systems break, and empires shake. You've asked, what do the humans want? The answer is simple. We want to stop playing your game. He paused. You built a system where obedience is rewarded and defiance erased. You called it order. But we call it stagnation. You thought tribute would keep us humble. You thought crushing one species would keep the others in line. And maybe, for a while, it did. But you made a mistake. You chose the wrong species to threaten. He leaned forward, and every rebel outpost, every silent colony, every subjugated world saw the fury behind his restraint. We come from a world where we fought extinction, disease, and each other just to learn how to survive. You think starships make us dangerous? No. It's the part of us that refuses to kneel that terrifies you. It should. He let the silence breathe, then spoke the line every system would remember for generations. You demanded tribute. Instead, we taught you fear. He cut the feed. Let the message burn across the stars. In the days that followed, rebellions turned into revolutions. Empire-aligned forces either defected or vanished into irrelevance. Elias refused to take titles. No supreme commander. No chancellor. No throne. The humans had dismantled one empire. They weren't about to build another. But the ghosts of the past still stirred. In a classified briefing, Elias met with his top intelligence officers. Commander Rios laid a series of images before him. These symbols match what we pulled from the progenitor archives, she said. Old designs, pre-imperial era. Long thought extinct. You know what this means. Elias studied the marks, spirals, binary latticework, strange geometric formations. They matched patterns hidden in Earth's earliest ruins, places too old to be mapped by any galactic standard. It means we weren't just left behind, he murmured. We were seeded. Rios narrowed her eyes. And now we're blooming. But Elias wasn't sure that was a good thing. Keep this quiet, he said. If the galaxy starts seeing us as something worse than the Empire, they'll turn on us. And if it's true? She asked. If we are becoming what the progenitors once were? He met her gaze. Then we make sure we don't forget what that turned into. Because he knew what power without restraint became. They had seen it in the Empire. They'd destroyed it. But now that the galaxy was listening to them, following them, fearing them, this was the moment it could all go wrong. He returned to Cortax Prime not to rule, but to dismantle. The great tribunals were decommissioned. Slave chains melted into building material. Broadcast towers turned into schools. Everywhere he walked, people called him a liberator. He hated it. Because deep down, he knew liberation wasn't an end. It was a burden. Vrakarn remained imprisoned. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Elias visited him once. The former executor sat silently, stripped of armor, more insect than icon now. You could have ruled the galaxy forever, Elias said. But you ruled with fear. That always has an expiration date. Vrakarn looked up, voice a rasp. And what do you rule with? Elias didn't answer. He left the question in the cell. Because he wasn't sure yet. But he knew this. The galaxy didn't need another empire. It needed something it hadn't seen in 1,000 years. It needed time to remember what freedom sounded like. And humanity, flawed, furious, defiant humanity, had given it a voice. It didn't end with a treaty. There was no ceremony, no official surrender, no signatures on golden tablets. The Galactic Empire didn't die with a declaration. It died in fragments, slowly and irreversibly, collapsing under the weight of its own silence. One planet at a time, the stars stopped answering to Imperial command. And still, no human called themselves a conqueror. Elias Cross walked through the ruins of a former tribute processing center on Kairos V. It had once received thousands of captured lives a month. Now it was quiet. Not abandoned, transformed. Where slaves had stood in lines, children now played with chalk on old stone. The symbols of the Empire had been chipped away, buried under layers of dirt and time. What rose in their place wasn't a flag, but something simpler, choice. He never asked for thanks. That wasn't why he did it. And yet every time he arrived on another liberated world, they looked at him like he was the architect of something bigger than a victory. But he knew better. This wasn't a new era. Not yet. It was a chance. Nothing more. Chances were fragile. And he'd seen how easily they broke. At Earth Command, the broadcasts continued. Not orders. Not demands. Just signals of support. Human fleets had withdrawn from half of their staging sectors within days of victory. No permanent occupation. No resource contracts. No new systems of governance imposed. They left behind training, knowledge, tools, and warnings. To the confused, to the frightened, to those who feared humanity had simply become the new empire, Elias offered one answer. "We didn't burn the crown to wear it," he said. "We shattered it so no one else could." The message reached every system that had once bowed under imperial pressure. Some took the offer of aid. Others chose independence. A few tried to rise and seize power themselves. Those few quickly learned humanity wouldn't tolerate imitators. It was in one of those moments, when a former imperial vassal attempted to reimpose a slave structure using Earth's silence as an excuse, that the full weight of Elias's resolve was seen. He authorized a single operation. Not an invasion. A reminder. 4 warships, stealth-equipped, entered orbit. They broadcast a single phrase. "We are not your leash. But we are still watching." No shots fired. No demands. And the system reformed itself within hours. It was enough. But for every fire he extinguished, another spark flared. That's what kept him awake. Not fear of war. Not fear of losing. Fear of becoming the thing they'd just broken. In one of the final assemblies held aboard a neutral station in the Icaron Drift, Elias met with the remaining factions forming what would soon become the Unified Species Council. They asked if Earth intended to lead. He declined. They offered him a permanent chair. He refused. "You don't need a human at the top of your chain," he said. "You just need to stop building chains." The room had gone quiet. One delegate finally spoke, hesitant. "What if we fail?" Elias had only smiled, faint and tired. "Then you'll understand why we chose not to rule." The last conversation he had with Vrakkarn was short. The former executor had deteriorated, not from wounds, but from irrelevance. The thing that once controlled 10,000 worlds now couldn't control its own fate. Still, he looked Elias in the eye when he asked the question. "Was it worth it? All this destruction? All this loss?" Elias didn't answer right away. He walked to the edge of the cell, staring out at a city being rebuilt not with steel, but with hands. People working together, not as subjects or rulers, but simply survivors making something new. He turned. "It wasn't destruction," he said. "It was subtraction." Vrakkarn tilted his head. "Of what?" "Of fear." And then he left. History would record that the Galactic Empire died not from superior firepower, but from psychological collapse. That one species, long underestimated, dismantled the most powerful structure in the known galaxy not by replacing it, but by refusing to repeat it. They'd weaponized their own trauma, their instincts, their defiance. And then they'd walked away from the throne. Elias disappeared soon after. No announcement. No broadcast. One day he was in command briefings. The next, he was gone. Some claimed he'd returned to Earth. Others said he'd taken a small ship and vanished into deep space, tired of being a symbol. No one knew for sure. But his words remained. No matter what corner of the galaxy you visited, no matter what dialect you spoke, one phrase echoed through murals, rebel songs, and scratched messages carved into walls. "You asked for tribute. You got our answer." And below it, always, a single human word. "Free."